Hello, and welcome to Roofers Coffee Shop, RLW. Thank you so much for being here. It's Read, Listen, Watch, and that's because we are going to bring it to you live today, but it will be available for you to read, to listen to, and to watch on demand as we go forward. My name is Heidi Ellsworth, and I am very excited about this RLW today. In fact, we have some returning guests who, as you know, are very knowledgeable, amazing when it comes to estimating software. But first, some housekeeping notes. We are recording this. As I already mentioned, it will be on demand within the next 24 hours. If you have questions, the chat is open, and we would love to know who you are. We already had Michael Black. Thank you, Michael, come in from Sarasota. Please let us know, give us your name, where you're from, what type of business that you have, commercial or residential. We just love to get the chat going, and we'll be asking questions and taking questions throughout the entire presentation. So let's get started. As I said, this is on estimating software and the roofing industry. So we all know nothing is more important than professional, high-performance estimating. So we've brought the professionals here who can talk about estimating and the technology that is the technology tools that you need for great estimation. So I would like to introduce, I'm very happy to introduce, first of all, Eugene Zukowski with Jobba, a returning favorite. Eugene, thank you so much for being here today. Can you introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about Jobba?
Oh, perfect. Oh, thank you again for having me. Eugene Zukowski with Jobba Trade Technologies. We are a platform designed to help the roofing contractors run their entire company, everything from managing customers all the way through proposals and invoicing. And obviously for today's discussion, a big part of that is estimating.
Yeah, I mean, we are going to really get into it, and this is going to answer some questions about what tools you need when it comes to technology and estimating. And let's be honest, there's no one in the industry better than John Kenney when it comes to estimating training. John, welcome back to the show. We love having you. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Cotney Consulting.
Sure. Well, Heidi, thank you for having me here. And I'm really excited to join today with Eugene. I think there's going to be great RLW for everybody out there listening. A lot of you know me. If you don't, I've spent 45 years on the contracting side. Roofing is my passion. That's why I like to continue to train and work with everyone in the roofing industry. I'm now CEO of Cotney Consulting Group, and what we do here at Cotney is I work with training in the aspects of estimating, of course, that's what we're talking about today, project management and field management, and other aspects of your business operations. So again, like I said, I'm happy to be here, and I'm so glad you guys had me back.
That is great. Thank you both for being here. And I do want to let everyone know again that we will be open for questions throughout the whole presentation. So if you have questions, I'll be watching the chat. Thank you so much, everybody. We're seeing all kinds of folks from all over signing in. Love it. And ask questions as we go. I also want to recognize our sponsor of today's RLW, Jobba. They provide the technology. We're going to talk about that at the end, but we have Eugene here. But I just want to say a special thank you for them sponsoring and for bringing this important topic to the industry. So, gentlemen, shall we get started?
Please.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about why you need more than a CRM. You know, everyone uses this term, Eugene, CRM. They just kind of throw it out there. But really, what does that mean? And why do you need more than a CRM? Can you kind of start us off?
Yeah, well, that's really kind of a question that I've been hearing a lot. Is I have a lot of people that would come up to me, for example, at the IRE show, I'm looking for a CRM. So then I really start to wonder, is CRM become another one of those terms, like when you look something up, I'm Googling it, or I need an API? Does people really understand what a CRM is? And a CRM is a great tool. It helps you manage customers and information. But what I think we really need is a tool that kind of has it all. Something that manages your customers, your information, helps the sales process. So really, to me, contractors need more than just a singular tool to handle that. So something that can handle, again, customers, proposals, estimating, get my crew out there, and it's all under one platform that really helps them run their company as a whole. Not that CRMs are bad, I just think there's more that's needed in industry.
Well, and it's the workflows, right? I mean, that's really when you can have all your customers in one place, but if you don't know what you're doing with them and those workflows aren't flowing through, you're in trouble.
Yeah, when your data is all over the place, when your customers are in your CRM, and then you have another tool to use to actually process the work, and then let's not forget accounting and stuff that's in there all the way. It's really, I think, it's not just the CRM that we need. We need that platform that's really going to help us keep everything in one place. And again, like you said, workflows. What do we do with historical records and things like that?
Right.
So there's just so much information, and I really think contractors need to look for a tool that's going to help them pull that off.
Yeah, really managing the data. I don't think we thought of it that way before, but data comes in, your customer comes in, they have a project. How are we managing that data all the way through the process?
Yeah, nothing's more fun than, you know what I mean? We don't want the days of we lose a salesperson and their Rolodex is the most important piece of information that they have. We don't want those data silos anymore. We want to be able to share information across the company so everybody knows what's going on.
So, okay, when I'm sure there's a number of contractors out there right now, and they're all making notes in here right now and saying hello. So I want to say hello to everybody. But they're all, maybe they have a CRM, maybe they have, I saw one comment in here, they had AccuLinks and the Edge. They have a lot of different, looking at different softwares, maybe different tech stacks at this right time. So I think as we're talking about upgrading to estimating software, however you're doing that full system, that full platform, there are things to look out for. So John, you've been down this road, you've worked with a lot of different software. What are some of the pitfalls that should be avoided?
Well, definitely spreadsheets are better than pad and paper. So that was a big improvement when that came out many, many years ago. But I recommend if anyone out there is using spreadsheets, you want to start that trip away from them as soon as possible for a couple reasons. One is we have here about version control. It is very hard to update your estimates and actually know which version is correct or which tab are you going to click on if you got multiple versions of that estimate. A lot can get lost, and you don't have really any processes or control over your estimating department that way. There's no way of looking at it, having somebody running your estimating department that's responsible for all the estimators to be able to go into one system and take a look at what's going on, where they're at with the estimates, what kind of a ratio, tracking your ratios of sales and hits and, basically where you're at in estimating. But it's also very difficult to understand ratios of labor versus material and overages and all the things that you really need to know in estimating to get it done by running strictly on spreadsheets. So, if you've heard me speak before, and if you work with me before, I will always tell you that, and this is going to lead into the software benefits coming up with Eugene, talk a little bit about that. It's a tool, and that's what I want everybody to understand. There's nothing better than having a great tool, which is where these softwares come in to enhance the abilities of a well-trained estimator. And we're covering more on that later, but that's the big thing to remember.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry, Heidi. It's just I was so excited about this slide in particular and the way John said it, because we did a survey recently asking contractors specific questions, and I wanted to bring this up now. And I was pretty surprised by the results. So the question was pretty simple. Of all your estimators, how many are using the exact same system? So we go back into spreadsheets, for example. John was saying things like version control. So the answer is over 50% of the contractors said somebody's either using something totally different or they have their own version of the estimating tool. So something like spreadsheets really leaves us open to that situation where people make their own versions of the estimating tool for the company. And that's kind of where I think some of the software benefits come in, is not only do we have speed and accuracy, we have consistency. If everybody's on the same platform and everybody's using the same estimating process, we get better as a company, we get repeatable, and we get that information out the door quickly. It's streamlining things, so we're no longer spending hours just building estimates and capturing data. Now we're actually producing those. And again, strategic project planning. I mean, we can get together as a group, as a company now, and really look at our estimates and things like that, and figure out the best way to do it. And again, John mentioned earlier incorporating, we're going to show you how we can incorporate those best practices using an estimating software that John's going to mention.
Yeah, I know we're going to hit on this just a little bit, but I think it's so important when you think about when you're working with software, with an estimating software or an overall platform, you are actually getting the best of everybody who's using it, right? I mean, all these systems are coming in, you're learning from each other, you're talking to each other. And so that just kind of hit me when you said that, Eugene, that this is a way that to really bring the processes into place and not feel like you're just siloed out there with an Excel document.
Exactly. And it's really nice when you can start looking at that data long term, and say, you know what, we've priced this out several times using this, and our performance is either we're doing great, maybe we're overpricing, we're not doing so good. Let's take a look at it. But now, to me, it's easy to adjust a process when it's done repeatedly. If everybody's doing it the same way, it's easier to find ways to improve it.
Right. So, okay, there's still a lot of people who are doing, probably not in commercial as much, doing handwritten estimates, but there's a lot of people who have very great systems put together with Excel sheets that's hard to make that switch. So let's talk just a little bit about, how estimating tools can standardize. So let's talk about why this, what's the carrot? What's the reason you should make this switch to use these tools, John, as you talked about before? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I understand that that's a great statement that you made, especially a contractor starting out comes into what can you afford or what you're used to, or I've been doing it so many years like this, why do I want to switch? Well, a couple reasons. Like I said, again, think of this as a tool. It's kind of like, why did you go from, and I remember having typewriter class in school. We didn't have computers then. Why would you want to go from a typewriter to a word processor, which was a big discussion back in its day? Well, because of a lot of things we're looking at here: organization, structure, standardization, errors and omissions. A lot of things come into it. So look at it that way. It's a tool to take you to that better level of being more efficient, right? So when you want to get into organization, what do we mean by organization? You want to be able to have, get away from that paper folder where the estimate software will allow you to have all your plans, your specs, your notes, your photos, whatever it may be that goes into understanding what type of estimate you're going to be doing in one spot. Not only for you as the estimator to have, but for somebody who's reviewing it. Even if you're a small, let's say you're a 2-person office company, and you do not want to be the only one reviewing your own estimates. You want someone else to look at your work. It just makes common sense and make, for the errors and omissions we'll get to in a minute. The estimate structure, right? You want to have an estimate structure. What do I mean by that, right? The bid item. You want a section of your estimate of your base bid and any alternates that you come up with. So when you're doing a spreadsheet or you're doing a hand method, that's a lot of ways to keep going back and forth. Where when you get into a software, you can easily structure these and, what type of system. A lot of times you may, even in residential, you have multiple systems you need to put an estimate together on. So there's nothing easier than, I don't want to just use copy and paste, but that's kind of what it is. Modular to a new modular, make your changes and you're off and running. And then you have phases. If you're, bigger contractor, we all understand those phases, different sections of the buildings, different buildings themselves. In the area, what if you got multiple buildings? You can have all that set up so that you're not going back and doing the same estimate or lumping them in together. The reason why you don't want to lump them all in one shot is because then you cannot have an easy breakout to get that information to your field. And that is the most important thing. I don't care how good of an estimator you are, if you cannot get your information to your field operations side efficiently and in an understandable fashion, so they know how your thought process was to put that estimate together, you have a failing estimate. I don't care how good you are. It's only as good as how it gets done in the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you want to standardize your estimate summaries. What do I mean by summaries? That's where you look at your cost of your materials, your labor, your taxes, your equipment, bonds, so on and so forth. You want that to all come out in that summary sheet in the same exact way, so everyone's used to looking at it. And if something's missing, Maybe a job doesn't have a bond. Well, there's a great question. I don't see a bond on this summary. Oh, it's not required on here, right? That's very hard to pick up if it's just buried in a whole list of items on a spreadsheet or on a piece of paper. And then again, errors and omissions, especially errors. Software, Excel spreadsheets, especially if multiple people are using them or they change them, you can have math errors very easily, which you don't have with the software because they're pre-programmed, you can't change it. But most importantly, your controls. What is your overhead markup? What is the gross profit or net profit range you want to work in? You can set these guidelines, what's taxable, what's not taxable, and all those different things. And then again, you look at your end result coming out of a programs, like these, you can look at what's missing and not missing. It's very easy because it's all in the same structure. So that's why I love these tools for standardizing your estimates.
Yeah, and I just think about redundancy of data also. If you're entering it over and over and over again, that is where your errors and omissions can really, we all make mistakes on that. Oh, I'm being old on that 10 key, which we probably don't have anymore. So we'll move on. So when you're looking at that, John, and you're looking at the key functions of a roofing estimator, you kind of started tagging this, but what, talk through that, their key functions and what they should be thinking about.
Sure. This is the one I love the most. Estimator's number one job. I love asking this question when I'm speaking live. I get multiple answers. Probably no more than a third of the audience usually gets it right. I hear selling, get work, whatever it is. No, your number one job as an estimator is to put an accurate estimate together of exactly what it's going to cost your company to perform, to get that work done, without, no worry about what your sales profit is. That doesn't come into the estimating portion at this part. It is to get it right up to break even. It is to get that estimate so your company knows how many hours, how much material, how much equipment, and it's got its overhead covered for the amount of days you're going to be on the job. That is what your job is, to come out with an estimate that is accurate and exactly what it's going to cost your company to do. So, and I get these questions a lot, right? What skills are required in an estimator? So I kind of broke them down a little bit easier for this one, RLW we're doing today. I like to look at it is there's 4 common soft skills of a roofing estimator, and a company, or this would be a great thing if you want to hire someone new, or if you're someone new coming in the industry to see if you fit in, right? A roofing estimator needs to be analytical. You have to have abilities to analyze. That's very important. You have to have communication skills. Highly communication skills are so important in this job, right? And you got to be, you have to be organized and then detail oriented. Those are the 4. So when I'm to touch on them, basically, when I'm talking about organization, I'm not talking about having your desk clean and all that. You have to know how to organize in your mind how to get a job done, how to be able to put that together, how to properly price, how to do all these things. And then detail oriented. Let's face it, the estimating is one of the most detail oriented positions you're going to do into a company. And then jumping into that, we want to talk about the key properties. What I mean by that is a good estimator needs to have a few things, right? Now we have get the skills. We're good on that. Now you're bringing them up. You got to have industry knowledge, right? So you have to understand what you're estimating. You got to know what our industry, you got to know about our industry. You have to including means and methods. So that's most important when you put an estimate together. What are the means and methods of your company? This is where the historical data and all that comes in. And then again, you got to be consistent and efficient. What I mean by consistent, if you're high, you're low, you're in between, I have no idea where your bid's going to come in. That's not consistency. Consistency is putting that accurate bid together time after time after time. That's what I depend on an estimator to do. And efficiency, that you can get it done within a reasonable amount of time, accomplishing all those other things. So those are extremely important. And I want to jump on this last part. I'm so glad you put this on there. I get all kinds of slack when I say this. Estimators can sell. Salespeople should not estimate. All right. What I mean by that is it's a skill set, but estimators can sell. We just looked at the skills required. It's communication. I hear a lot of times people say, oh, estimators have to be all withdrawn. They got to be good with numbers. So they sit in a room and they pump numbers out. Absolutely not. I mean, the best, I know companies, and I've done it through my career. We didn't have a sales team. We sold our own work because we knew how to communicate. So that's what I'm saying. You can teach these skills once you get the basics down and go sell. That's the whole key right there.
I love it. I love it. So, but sometimes you can train salespeople to be estimators.
You can train them. That's different.
That's
There's
different.
a big
Yeah.
difference between just having an estimator or a salesperson throw a price together, which I hear all the time. Our company say it should be within this range, go sell it. Either way, so if you're a salesperson and you're trained estimator, you're still an estimator that can sell.
I love it. I love it. And I am going to remind everybody, the chat is open. If you have any questions as we're going along, I had to make a couple notes there because I thought those 4 soft skills were pretty awesome that John mentioned. Okay, John, let's keep it going. Estimating and bidding requirements.
To bid or not to bid? And that is the question. And what I really mean by that is you have to know your company. You should put some sort of an estimating filter into your company that when something comes in, whoever is filtering your bids, you really don't want to have one estimator bidding a type of work that you really don't do well and another one does because they think that's right. You want to have that filter that says, hey, we're good at this, we're good at this, we're not good at this. If we get this, we can do it, but we want to have a conversation about it before we put a bid in. Make it simple. Have a tree, a flow chart, a tree coming in. If it's this, go here, no, yes. Very simple. Plan your estimate. As an estimator, you have to take the time to plan your time. How long is it going to take you to do the estimate? How complicated is this estimate? Do I need to do a site visit? Do I have someone doing a site visit for me? All those things that come into it. And you want to keep good notes on what you're doing along. Have you read through the specs, the plans, the invitation to bid? Have you planned out your specifications? If you're doing a re-roof and you're specifying, plan it all out. This all happens before you even start to do your takeoff. And this one here, I love to do, build your estimate from the ground up. And this is where estimating software really shines in comparison to trying to do it manually. You should build it exactly the way you're going to roof it. So you're going to hit the job. You got to have job set up. You're going to have to put safety up. You got to have safety set up. Is it a tear off? You got to tear the roof off. You should look at that next. Do you have a temporary roof or not a temporary roof? Are you putting it back? You got metal coping, you got metal edge, flashings, all of that. You should put your estimate together that way for a couple reasons. One is that's the way the field's going to do it. So it's easy to break out your information package. And secondly, you won't miss anything if you're consistently doing an estimate each way, the way it's going to be done in your company. So I really like to look at that. And when I train, that's what I like to train. Build it from the ground up. And then the right systems and processes. Eugene, I think you can kind of really elaborate on this one, but when I mean right systems and processes, it is having these good things we just talked about in your estimating and building your estimating processes in-house and then taking them and jumping right into the right systems, which is really where the software comes in.
Yeah, exactly, John. When I work with contractors a lot, one of the first things I hear just paying attention is, oh, so-and-so can't miss this anymore. You know, now I don't have to worry about something getting missed on a bid because it's in the estimating template. So I hear those comments all the time. So it must be such a common thing where we're just missing something we didn't think of, or all of a sudden we don't qualify for a warranty because we missed a wrong fastener, or we fixed that roof with the wrong repair stuff. So a lot of those things are now eliminated because we took the time to set up all those things in advance. So we know exactly what everything should have in it. We set it up together, and now we gave the team a tool that they can estimate off of that set up the right way. And then we just help you reinforce that process because we've set it all up to work that way. And that's the great thing about the software. Software, like you're saying, is a tool. It's not going to do the work for you, but what it's going to help you do is your team make a repeatable process that you guys can produce all the time.
Exactly.
And I was just going to say, John, you made me really think of something, and Eugene, earlier when you were talking about this. If we're talking about the days of the folders, right? Then, as you were saying, be sure that you are keeping your notes, you're planning your estimate, you have the you have the company criteria for what jobs to bid and which jobs not to bid. Well, that used to all be in a folder that might be in a truck somewhere, or might be in the, who knows where that folder is, where today it's in the cloud. And so all the notes from estimators live where everyone can see them, so things don't get lost. I mean, I think that's a key point in here.
Yeah,
It is. I just want, let me throw this back at Eugene. I want to get your opinion. This is the last thing I want to talk about on this systems and processes. These are the two biggest mistakes that I see made between companies and software. When you have an estimating department, you really have to have your processes and how you're going to estimate and your best practices in place. First mistake I see is the companies are not working with their software estimating people during the training process and during the onboarding process to take their best practices and make sure the software is working in conjunction with how they're going to put their bids out. The other mistake that I see is the reverse. This is definitely yin and yang, is that you don't have very good processes in place. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. Like, let's go back to the example we used from the survey, multiple spreadsheets, different versions. Then we go to buy, as a company, buy that software and expect that software to fix our problems and be the new processes and systems for estimating department. And that doesn't work well either. You have to both have to work in conjunction with each other.
Yeah, 100%, John. I mean, there's a lot of things from software implementation, like best practices, like, executive buy-in and things like that. But this particular thing is so important that it's part of our onboarding process actually for estimating is to review those things with you. Like if we're working with, one of your customers, we help them implement the things that you teach them. So it's right in the system. I mean, your customers are actually pretty easy to onboard because of that, because we kind of know how to put those things into place. But that's really it. We really want to sit down and what are your processes? Well, we either find out there are no processes, so we help you create them, or we take your processes and we talk to the next person and we find out, no, that's not our process. That's on Tuesdays. We do something different on Fridays. So it's really getting the whole team to buy in and understand what it is that we're doing and then put that into the software. Punching in the numbers is the easy part. It's let's do this together and set this up, the best processes that work.
Communications.
Yeah, communication.
And that really leads us to best practices for roofing estimating, because that's what we're already getting there. We're talking about that. So Eugene, John, why don't you start us off with on those best practices and kind of what I love how we're building this correlation between the best practices and the software. The tool is the software and how these will incorporate into it.
So, risk management and decision making, not enough of that is done at that initial level through your estimating department. Most companies don't have a process in place of what to check for, which, includes, is the job the right fit for my company? What is it, a schedule or backlog risk? Do I have the openings to do this? Do I have the talent? Do I have estimators that have done this before? All kinds of questions that you could set up. That's a whole nother webinar in itself. So we'll go deep that and make these decisions. But the nice thing about this is you have to have data in order to really set up a proper risk management system in your company. That's where software is going to come in. You have got your information in there, and after you're using this a while and you put, you're getting feedback out of there, you're going to know what you're good at, what you're not good at, what's happening from the estimating standpoint, profit fade going out to the field. Maybe it's coming in, maybe we're doing better. You get all this. Where do we stand in the marketplace? So that will help you make better decisions in risk management in there. Markup versus profit. I love this one. Markup and profit are two complete different things. As an estimator, you look at markup as that's to cover your overhead. So we talked about getting an accurate price together to break even. That includes your markup. That's what break even is. If the bare cost of a job is X, then your overhead is, X times 2, then it's your bet times X times 2. You come up with what your bare cost, your break even cost is. Profit is what you're going to make. And you want to make sure, so you've got your overhead covered. So, if you went out and did the job for that price and everything went perfectly and your estimator was 100% on the stick, you're going to come back and do the job and not lose money. You're not going to make money, but you've covered your overhead to do it. Now comes a decision of what profit do I need to charge to get what my profit goals are in my company? Your strategy that you set up for your estimating and profit strategy. Well, software and Eugene, I know when I have gone back and forth, what I like is you have that availability to have a markup section in there and then also put your gross profit in based upon what you want to do, whatever your profit goals are. And I did that ever come up in the survey? Just out of quick curiosity.
Actually, out of all the survey questions, we'll cover in detail towards the end so everybody can see the questions that we asked.
Okay, perfect.
That was not one of them, but that's actually a good one that we should have asked. I should have called you first, John.
No, that's no problem with that. What I mean is everybody out there listening, understand that markup and profit are two different things. If you just take your estimate and mark it up by 1.3 times 1.3 because you want to make 30% gross profit, you're losing 3 to 4% of gross profit because multiplication and gross profit are different. Gross profit is a division and multiplication process. We won't get deep into that, but that doesn't have to be worried about when you have that already pre-programmed in your software. So you don't have to worry about it. Makes it easy. Essentials of project startup. We just talked about this, right? If you can't get the information correctly to your field, then nothing else matters. The roof can go down wrong. It's not installed correctly. Too many hours are wasted. Multitude of things can happen. That's where these come in nice. This is more than just estimating software, more than just a CRM. You have the ability for your field to go in that cloud and get access to everything that they may need. And then again, post-job reviews, and you can keep notes in the software here. You want to go back after a job is done and do that post-mortem. Most companies won't do it because they're afraid, because the people look at it as a punishment. It's not. I work with training companies all the time, how this is really a learning lesson. And if something is wrong, no one's to blame. Let's figure out what went wrong, make sure it's not done again, whether it's an estimating error or it's a field error, or it was an act of God. Sometimes that happens. You had too much rain on a project. You couldn't bring it in for what was estimated. So you need to know that, hey, we got this type of project in this area during this month. We've got to put something in for it because historically it rains here. Stuff like that. So you get that data. It's all kept in one spot and you have all this historical data to make your company even better.
Yeah. I mean, and Eugene, that's where data comes in, right? All of this is about knowing your numbers.
100%. Knowing your numbers, understanding your numbers, that is so key here. And also, I think a risk that we have when we get into data is, and I'm sure I didn't make this word up, but I just love it, is analysis paralysis. It's where you have so much data, you don't even know what you're looking at anymore. So we need to be able to get that data and organize it in a way that makes sense. As I call them, report stories. Is my data speaking to me? So building those KPIs, working with somebody like John to understand what my KPI should be, and then taking that data and looking at it in a way that it's speaking to you and helping your company make good decisions and drive those decisions. It's so easy to look at the last thing that happened and all of a sudden it became the rule. But if you looked at the data, the last 15 of them went perfect. It's that last one because it's sticking out like a sore thumb. So again, data is important, but being able to understand it, look at it, and consume it is also very important too.
Yeah. And speaking of that data, when we're looking at purchasing and the purchasing process, that's even, I mean, that just brings it home because we want to make sure we're doing the best possibility on our purchasing as roofing companies. So Eugene, why don't you start us out on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the key things of having everything in one system. I mean, it's so nice that goes from my estimate to my proposal, and then that becomes my purchase order. So I know exactly what I'm buying because it's exactly what was estimated, and it's exactly what the customer signed off on that they want to buy. No more guessing games and between, getting my material listed one place and then, oh, what do I got to buy now? What do I deliver? Or how does my foreman find out about what he's supposed to get dropped off and when? So it's really the ability or just being able to take that information from one place to another and streamline it. And that way, it's 100% accurate. You're not getting the wrong thing. Standardization, working with suppliers, being able to do things like, send an RFQ to, multiple suppliers, for example, if you need to bid the job, or being able to take that same estimate, turn it into your purchase order and get things shipped out so you don't accidentally overbuy or underbuy or whatever the case is. And it just kind of helps you really take that information from one source and move it on down the line so everybody can get their job done.
Yeah, and John, I mean, you remember, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, we're on the phone, and the phone is still important when you're trying to finalize a big job or do estimating and getting on there. But today, when you look at this, the relationship through technology with distribution for contractors has totally changed the landscape for estimators and for roofing companies overall.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to have the ability to print out and send these quote sheets to, your request for quotes to different distributors. And honestly, with the pandemic and this pandemic causing the supply chain shortages and that, and yes, we are better, but I will tell you is we've had these cycles throughout construction and nothing to do with the pandemic. Really, it's about relationships, and you want to be able to work with your A, B, and have a C backup supplier, so that you know where your pricing's at, and you also know where you can get your stuff. And that also builds up another data set to understand where your pricing is going and how it's traveling and changing. And then the only other thing I'm going to add on this is you now have the ability to print out a material list that goes with your field as well, and how it works, printed out per building, right? We break an estimate down into 3 or 4 sections. Yes, you're going to give your supplier the overall list of everything because you want that quote based on quantity. But now when it comes time to give it to your field, there's no breakout on your part of going back and breaking it out. You just say, okay, print section A, I got section B, C, and so on. And you give it to your field. It's got the labor hours. It's got the material broke out. They understand how to set the roof up. A lot of good things come from having all this in your process.
Okay, so let's keep on that line that you were just talking about, and that is the submittal process. John, maybe you can talk through, types of submittals and how this all works.
Sure. So before I get into the types of submittals and that, so some of the biggest mistakes that I've seen is the wrong set of submittals making it to the field. Okay. When we talk about the submittal process, I want to understand that as good as we are, we all want to try to get them approved on that first round. It's rare. It's rare that everything you're going to do for a consultant or a general contractor through an architect or building owner or whatever, that's going to get it. Or if you're putting your own specification together, sometimes if we don't have this all organized correctly, we don't get everything to the field again, what we need, even if we're specifying it. So the types of submittals, pretty straightforward to understand that. There's really 2 main types. There's action submittals and there's informational submittals, right? And informational submittals are those that you furnish as part of project closeout, consider maintenance manuals, and anybody on the service side, I'm going to say you should consider your warranty or your maintenance agreements, and all those things should go out as informational submittals at the end. So you're enhancing selling service. So that's a little plug for the service people. Always do it. I've done it with the companies I've been at. It works great. Your action submittals, those are the ones that you're going to give to the whoever is going to approve them. And they can cover everything from product data, material sheets, your shop drawings, your data detail cut sheets, color charts, safety data sheets, samples, mock-ups, etc. All that is a submittal package that you have to put together. So again, that is why you want to have all this in one place so that everyone knows what the current set is. It could say submittal 1, not approved, right? Submittal 2, approved. So you've still got it. I wouldn't recommend deleting it, but everyone knows that looking in there, there's only one set of approved. So that's the important elements of the submittal, is to get them all together and structure your package. How I recommend doing that is pretty much the order we just talked about. Have your product data sheets first, then your shop drawings, and then your mock-ups or your charts at the end. Mock-ups you really can't submit in that way. You do them on the site, but do them in a particular order. Whatever order works best for you and your company, do it the same way each and every time so that you'll know if something's missing. Have a checklist. This is not required. This is required. When you start mixing and matching and just lump it and put it in, a couple things happen. You have a chance for missing items. And I will tell you, when it gets to the person that's approving it, you will aggravate them to no end, and they're probably going to send it back and say reject it because they don't want to take the time to organize it for you. So that's how you structuralize it. And then centralization and documentation. where the software comes in, so that you know where everything is at, whether it's been approved or not approved, and if you got it to the field, what is the next moves, right? That's where it comes from.
And Eugene, we kind of talked about this at the beginning, but I'd love for you to, talk a little bit more about that centralization of documentation, and maybe talk a little bit about, who can see what, because I think sometimes that's a scary thing for people. It's like, well, everybody's going to see it. Well, no, you can set requirements.
Yeah, I mean, centralization of documents, I've seen everything under the sun for people to try and attempt something like this, from, OneDrives and different things out there to kind of keep things organized, or they'll put it on their internal network and then somebody in the field doesn't have it. So it's really about, one, keeping everything in the same place and having a structure that makes sense, like John is saying. Like, I have my pre-submittal folders, my approved submittals, I got bid docs, I got my changes. It's about having all of that information and repeating the process every single time, and then making it easy for people to get to it wherever they are. So if it's an office person, if it's a field person, even if it's a partner maybe who needs access to that data, it's about keeping it there and letting them see it. But then, like you mentioned, is we don't want to give away the keys to the castle. So a good software platform will allow you to do things like that, restrict permissions, or maybe they can view the data only, but not download it, for example, or different things like that. So you really want to be able to control access to it, and you need to be on a platform that will allow you to do that. And there's lots of different ways to do it. I mean, some of those solutions offer that stuff, but it's a lot of effort to manage. So you also want to do something that's not going to make data access a chore for the company either.
Right. Something that people can understand. And that really leads us to our next, what about getting your estimating platform up and running? Eugene, let's talk about that.
Wow, I should have looked at this slide twice before I said, what I mean? This is my favorite question. How long does it take to implement this?
Yeah.
So this is really one of those questions where I'm going to kind of go back to something that we talked about earlier, is how prepared are you as a company to implement an estimating software? Do we have processes in place? Do we understand how we're going to estimate? Obviously, if you have all those things in place, teaching you how to build them, use them, and get them out in the field, I mean, you can be up and running realistically in a few weeks. But if we have to start from scratch, it's not a problem, but it's going to take a little bit more time to figure out what that is and what that starting point is. So I think it's also important to have realistic expectations for implementing it, because again, it's a tool. It's not going to do the work for you. So I think depending on where we start, there's a different answer. If you're very organized, ready to go, up and running in a couple of weeks is a realistic expectation. If it's something where we kind of have to sit down and help you figure these things out, I would plan for a little bit longer timeline.
That makes sense. John, and talk about this. You talked to, and I think that's the key is, if you already have all these systems, your estimating is going great, and you just want to get into software, that's one thing. But if you need consulting, you need help, you need to look at it, or even if you don't think you need it, but you find out you do, this is really where you come in to be best practices and all that prep.
Yeah, and that's, what we talked about earlier, and Eugene brought up a great point. If you're at the point of getting where you want to improve and get onto the software, which I highly recommend, you've got to take the time, and that's, you're exactly right. That's what I do, to get all these set up first. Because if you don't, the pain of going back and trying to redo it after you failed, because your implementation failed because you didn't have your processes in place, and you got to go to retraining, you start to lose confidence. Your team loses confidence in what's happening. And I can tell you, all the years that I've implemented systems and softwares in companies, and it's worth the pain every single time to get this done up front. And it actually is quicker in the long run, and you get more buy-in. You have to have total buy-in from the team at some point to make this work. So take your time, get it done, and don't be afraid to reach out and ask the questions and get this done, and have your systems and processes in place. And culture, I know you touched on that, but that's what we're talking about. The culture means top down. Everybody in that company's got to buy into what you're going to do. Your owner, your managers, your senior management, the estimators, the field, whatever, your project managers. If you're going to do this, which you need to do this, you've got to have the right culture in there. You can't have a few naysayers saying, I liked it the way we've been doing it for 20 years. Nope. It can't be. You've got to get that culture and everybody rowing in the same direction, and it makes it a lot smoother.
Yes.
Or just real quick, Eugene, I just want to point
Please.
out on the culture thing, because you guys said it earlier, that if you aren't prepared, if you aren't ready for going to the software and doing all the work ahead of time, and then you try to come back and do it a second time, that's a killer to culture. Because the employees are like, we've already been here before, it doesn't work, I don't want to do it. So that culture, so Eugene, continue with that.
No, but I mean, that's a great point. It's setting it up the first time for success, because again, like you said, if you roll it out once and it kind of falls on its face, everyone's going to roll their eyes. They'll show up, but they're not really into it. And at that point, they're already kind of given up. So again, preparing to succeed and planning to succeed in the beginning is going to be great success. But one point in the slide that I kind of always run into when I do implementations is training. People don't, for some reason, people forgot there's training involved, and that's a commitment to the time. And always the excuse I get, I don't want to say excuse, the only reason I get from the sales team, I got proposals to do, I got to get stuff out there. And I'm like, you do, but that's what we're trying to make better. Let's slow down a little bit so we can do 20 proposals right, instead of getting that one out the door that has to be there right now. And that's a commitment from the company and executive buy-in and team buy-in to, this is what we're doing. I just want to make sure that training does require time, and it's an expectation for success.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're talking about salespeople or anybody who's
I
looking
want to pick
get,
on the salespeople, then they're my
right.
favorite to pick on. I don't want to pick on them too much.
No, I mean, it's everybody across the board. You have a job to do, you're being judged on that, and you want to get the job done, and to be able to have your things that you have to get done stop because you're in training is hard. So you have to have that full commitment and really incentivize the employees to be a part of this and to adopt that. And I think being realistic, and I'm going to take your last bullet point, but I want you to talk about this a little bit. And John, maybe you start out being realistic about allowing enough time to do this, not just like, oh, it didn't work, it's a week later, forget it.
Yeah, I mean, these are some tips that I've gone through when I've done the same thing. So I'm making the decision now. My company, I'm running my company, estimating department head, whatever I may be, and we're going to use Eugene. We're going to bring the software in. We've already made that commitment. We're done with that end. That very first meeting that I want to have now that we know we're going to train and implement is meet with Eugene or in his team or someone on his team, whoever's my implementation person, and say, here's my systems, here's my processes, this is how we do it, so that he and his team understands what we do as a company, which is going to save a lot of time. Then to get halfway through this and say, well, this doesn't work because I didn't know that you're doing it this way. So whatever it takes, that first hour, 2 hours, whatever it may be, you get all that out and you have a plan in place, and then you can say, okay, now Eugene, based upon what we just reviewed and went over, and you now understand more about what we do, what should I allow for this? And how much, what's realistic, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it may be. Now you have an expectation. Then I would go back to my team and say, okay, we're going to start implementation of this on X date. This is what we're going to be doing over these whatever few weeks. We may need to get estimates out. We know that unless you're doing it in an off season, maybe you got to work the weekend, maybe work the nights. That's where you incentivize your own employees to get your work done and not suffer in the training. Because the longer you delay this training and interrupt it and you're onboarding, the longer this is going to take and the more chances of not learning it correctly.
That's a great point. So Eugene, let's talk about a little bit about how Jobba can help. And before you start, 1 second, I do want to encourage everyone. You've great information, a lot of information. If you have questions, please type them into the chat, because we want to make sure we have about 10 minutes left of the RLW. We want to make sure we answer any of your questions. So please enter those in the chat while Eugene brings us home on how Jobba can help.
And I want to apologize. I was a little quick on the gun today, so I'm so sorry about that during the whole session. I'm just really excited about this topic. It's really interesting. But platform that can help the entire company. So again, Jobba's that platform where we have the entire company's process in mind. Everything from the sales team to inspections and estimating to working with supers and scheduling and invoicing. So we really have something for every part of the organization to help them do their work. We're not just one tool that does one thing. We really want to be able to share information across the field, to the office, to the sales team, to be able to work with estimating, to give them a tool to help them create estimates, and then pass that information along to that, foreman who's 300 miles away trying to do the job. So again, it's really designed to help the entire company increase communication, increase efficiency, and centralize practices across the entire company. So sorry, go ahead, Heidi.
No, I was just going to say, you know what, Eugene, you're right. We all talked about a lot of this as we were going through, because I think we got kind of excited, but it goes back to what we were talking about, best practices, training. So keep sharing that, please.
Yeah, so we really want to help you do things like implement best practices. That could be everything from, I want my people in the field doing a specific set of checklists. Did you go in the office and shake hands with the office manager? Did you pick up all your tools? Did you walk around the entire building? It doesn't matter what it is. We want to help you help your team enforce those best practices. And we have lots of different ways to help you guys do that. We working hand in hand with training and with estimating trainers and trainers. So we have fields, we have implementation team that can help you guys do the things that John said, like, well, we have these processes, we don't have them documented. Well, we can help you guys document them. Well, hey, we want to do things like this. How does Jobba do that? So maybe the leadership team wants to review training to make sure we train the way they want their team to look. So we have a lot of those things that we kind of incorporate and really want to help. We don't just say, here's your software, here's your login, see you later. We really feel that we're there to work with the contractor to help them implement this to success. Data, we believe your data is your data. So we want to help you look at that data, use it, access it, help you run your company. So lots of different things as far as data is accessible to the contractors. Communication. We want everything documented. We want it in the right place. We want to know when things are getting done. And which really, again, on that Jobba platform, we feel we have those tools to really help you guys.
I love that. And before we hop, we did put the survey into the chat, and we're going to hop to that in just 1 second. But before we do hop to that, because I think this is really good as you're talking about how can Jobba help, Eugene, we have a question, and it's, does Jobba also incorporate the job costing, time card info, payroll, and accounting functions of the project? And that's from Jason. Thank you, Jason.
Perfect. That's a great question. So all those things that you're asking for, we do have job costing, track time card information. We can pass all that on over to payroll, but we are not an accounting platform. What we feel Jobba is designed to feed accounting. We want to give you that data in a way that you can talk to your accounting platform, because again, we are a roofing software platform, not an accounting platform, but we are ready to talk to accounting. And what I mean by that is our data structured in a way that any accounting platform will be able to understand it. It's structured, organized, ready to go for accounting. Jobba wants to feed accounting.
Excellent. Eugene, real quick, talk about the survey. There's a link is in there. What was the survey about?
So we wanted to get our contractors, again, we've probably heard us say this a lot of times, but we really feel we're a contractor first software development company. So we're looking for things to try and really help our contractors solve. So we decided to send a question about surveys. Estimating, on a survey on estimating. I knew it would come out eventually. So we asked a lot of questions in the survey about things like how long are they taking to create estimates? Now I'm talking re-roof projects, but a lot of people don't focus on service estimating. How long and how much time am I estimating service work? And then it's like, hold on, estimating service work, it's really surprising enough that a lot of people don't do it, or they do it and they kind of forget about it. So we were asking questions like on how much time you were spending. The result, you guys have to take a look at the survey itself, but it's really kind of interesting when I got some response saying, I spend more than a day or more than 4 hours creating just an estimate. Well, that seems like a lot of time to us, and why we're really interested in helping the roofing industry solve this estimating issue by streamlining it, standardizing it, and making it something that they can get more estimates out the door. Hopefully they win more work.
That's good. John, any comments on this before we go to our last point?
Yeah, no, that's a good survey. That it's I think everybody should take a look at it and see where they stand, what their peers think. But for sure, that's the whole purpose of having the software like Jobba. It's to make you more efficient and to do. I always like to put this in. There's only so many hours in a day. We all want to do more, but not have to spend more time doing it. And that's what if this is done right, that's what it allows you to do, to get more efficient, which means you're putting out more productive work in a day's period than you were before, which really makes your job so much easier.
Yeah. So in order to make your job easier, to make this easy, Jobba has put together a no hassle estimating demo, or estimating no hassle demo, which I think is key for a lot of people to be able to get that information. The link is in the chat. You can also find this information, of course, on Rufus Coffee Shop in the Jobba directory. You can also find that survey in the Jobba directory if you don't get it into the chat. But this is going to be no hassle demo. It's going to be on April, and I had the notes here, and where'd they go? April 11th. Someone's going to put that in here for me. 5th.
April 5th.
April 5th. And that is going to be a no hassle demo. You can just come on, just see what it's all about, and here's your registration. So everyone can check that out and find out. It's going to be across the board, understanding Jobba streamlines the entire estimating process, how it all works, and working with your sales team. So be sure, and here's my notes. I knew they were there. It's April 5th, 2023 from 1 to 2 p.m. Central. So we do have a couple questions here, but we have a few more minutes. I just want to encourage everybody, any last questions, please put those in there. And in the meantime, I'm going to pull a question that did come in. Eugene, does Jobba allow data to be captured in the field?
Yeah, so that's one of the strong things, and definitely something we want to show in the demonstration that's coming up next week, is how we connect that data from the field right into the estimating platform. So there's no more data silo between the two areas. So now I have everything in one place. I've captured my data. I can estimate in the field if I want to, or I could just simply say, hey, Mr. Estimator, your data's here, go do your estimate now. So we have that streamlined communication from the field to the office in real time, ready to go.
I love it. And here's another one. These had all come in earlier. Should you add permits and fees to your templates?
I'm going to refer that one to John there. John, what do you think about that? Is there certain things for best practices there?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in an area where you never have some areas you don't ever have to get a permit or pay for it. I know it's weird, but I've come across it in the US, maybe not. But yes, at a best practices, you would want to get these set up in your templates. The way a template is to have everything in there that you're going to need or could need that you use on a regular basis or semi-regular basis. And then if you don't have a cost for it, you're not using it in that estimate. You turn it off, simple as that. But that's also a good check and balance that you're not missing something. So I don't have to sit there and think, hey, do I have any fees? Do I have a bond on this job? Oh yeah, I do. I'll manually enter it in. It's going to come up on my estimate and say, do I have a bond, right? Oh, there's a bond column. I don't have a bond, $0. I don't have a permit fee on this one, or I do have a permit fee, or whatever it may be. So yeah, absolutely. I would want it on my templates.
I love it. Well, gentlemen, we're at the end. So we did have a couple questions about turn my estimate to a proposal. Can it be customized? So I'm going to encourage everyone to attend this no hassle demo on April 5th. 2023 from 1 to 2 p.m. to find the answer to that. Or you can always email us at Rivers Coffee Shop and we'll get your information to both Eugene and John. So gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. So informative.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. John, thank you again.
And Eugene, thank you. And Heidi, as always, thank you. This was a good RLW, get a lot of good information out there. Everybody just keep on learning. That's what it's all about.
So it's all about you two are such amazing resources. Thank you. Some thanks for coming in through the chat. And I want to thank all of you. Please join us again. Remember, it's always the last week of the month on Wednesday. We will have our next RLW. Very excited to have you all for that one. It will be with Adams and Reese. So we're going to be talking about some important legal information. So be sure to join us. I also want to encourage everyone to join us on April 13th for our next coffee conversations, which is on mergers and acquisitions. I'm very excited about that one. I want to hear what's going on. So join us, please register, and we will see. And very special thanks to Jobba. Thank you so much for hosting this and for all the great information. We will see all of you on the next RLW.